So this is a really hard question, is how much your expense is going to be in retirement. Yeah, it's really tough to figure that out because you really don't know exactly until you do get in retirement. You can guess, you can try to figure it out, but my personal experience is, I'm about, 14, 15 months into retirement now, and we're actually spending quite a bit less in retirement than we did when I was working. And, thank goodness, because that's the way we set our budget up. We wouldn't have had the money to keep spending the way we did. So what was happening in the last 5 or 6 years of retirement, and really we had a 10-year plan, was we were getting ready for retirement. We were buying things. We were buying I don't want to say our last cars, because we'll probably need, maybe some cars by the time we're 75 if we're still in good enough shape to drive. So we may need another car by then, but, make sure that our cars were in really good shape. Make sure the home improvements were done. We put a new roof on our house. We built carports so the hail, we didn't have to worry so much about hail damage during the spring and doing that mad rush to get everything into the garage, and stuff all the cars in there. We built some carports. We built my shop and this little studio that I'm shooting in right now. So we did a lot of things in those last 10 years, and especially in the last 5 or 6, we were paying off debt. We were trying to pay things off. The cars that we bought, we paid cash for them. The carports, we paid cash for them. The shop, we paid cash for it. We did all that to make sure that our debt would be a little bit lower when we got into retirement and we could keep our expenses down. So I think it's different for everyone, but your pre-retirement years, those last 5 or 6 years, normally are going to be your highest income years because you've been at your career the longest. Or if you're in business, you've learned a lot of things, you've learned how to manage things. So generally speaking, I think they're going to be your highest income, and they might be some of your lowest, expense years because you may be empty nested. Like us, we got our kids' college loans paid off, within those last 5 or 6 years. So, we had a lot of excess income. And again, that excess income we use to pay down debt. But a lot of people, what they'll say is, you need 90% of your pre-retirement income to live the same lifestyle that you were, before retirement. And I would kind of argue that in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. We know a couple who actually their spending has gone up. They're taking full advantage of their go-go years, and they're going into retirement, and they're traveling to Europe, they're traveling to Mexico, and they are going all over the place. They flew to San Diego, just for a Padres game for opening day. There was another reason they went out there also, but, they're doing great, and I'm really, really happy for them. Anyway, again, that being different for most people, you got to take a look at it, and you got to be aware of what you're going to spend when you get into retirement. And some people are going to spend more, but I think the majority of people are going to spend a little bit less. So do a little bit of calculating and figure out, do a budget sheet and figure out really what you are going to spend in retirement before you just figure that you can't retire until you have 90% income, coming in, because there are some other things that are going to go away in retirement. Social Security taxes are going to go away. Medicare taxes are going to go away. You're not going to be contributing to your savings anymore. So that, for most of us is going to be, 10 to 20% of our income was going into our retirement savings. That's not going to come out anymore. But some things are probably going to get more expensive, even if you're going on Medicare. If you're 65 when you retire and you go on Medicare, a lot of you, your company insurance wasn't costing you as much as your Medicare might. And if you're going like me, if you're going into retirement before you're Medicare eligible, boy, that gets really expensive. So, that's a big expense for my wife and I. So we're kind of, that's where we're kind of on the ledge as far as expenses go, is, you know, we got to pay almost $2,000 a month for health insurance until we're both 65. Well, it'll drop off a little earlier for me. I'm a little older than she is, but still, it's a big expense. So going into retirement, you know, we didn't take all the money that we were spending and figured that we just wouldn't spend it. We put some of that money into travel from, you know, the projects that we were doing around the house and the upgrades and the money that we were spending there. You know, we converted some of that into travel money. And, you know, that's kind of was our emergency fund. And it really helped out when we did get into retirement. It kind of let us get on our feet and figure out how much we were really going to spend and get into that routine. Was, you know, taking that money and converting it into travel, because we have taken quite a few trips. They've all been domestic, and my wife doesn't like to fly, so, you know, it's pretty much been in a car. But we've taken off and gone to Nevada twice. You know, we went down South Texas a couple of times, and, you know, kind of enjoyed the car trips. And we've done some in an Airbnb. We haven't been out in our motorhome too much yet, but we're planning on, you know, dusting off that motorhome and getting it on the road this summer. So like I pointed out earlier in the video, one of the things and, you know, comments I've gotten on videos, you know, coming back, is a lot of people are just really having to wait until they're 65 to retire so they can get on Medicare. Not so much for Social Security, but, you know, for that Medicare, because they just can't swing the medical payments that it's going to take to get medical insurance before 65. So that is really what a lot of people are waiting for, you know, is when they can go ahead, because you can get your Social Security at 62, and a lot of people have to take it at 62, unfortunately, because of their health and other things, you know. And that, again, that is a very personal decision, whether to take your Social Security at 62 or 65, you know, depending on, you know, how you're set up financially. But the Medicare really could be a big deal. And I'm hoping that Congress and the White House, I'm really hoping that they're taking that into consideration as to how much health insurance is costing elderly people right now. And it's robbing a lot of people of their golden years in retirement. You know, they may be able to retire a little bit earlier, but $2,000 a month is just a lot to swing. So I hope this video has helped you, and if it has, reach down, hit that like button, and watch this video next.